Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. And yeah, I'm having this little bit energetic hangover from the kind of great shows we've had all week long, and especially last night. And it's only Wednesday, and we've got a great show coming up. But this particular show, many of you have heard the conversations that I've had with Brett Bevell. He's the author of several books, including the one we talk quite a bit about, Healing Racism Within. But also, he's also the author of books like Psychic Reiki and The Wizard's Guide to Energy Healing, the Reiki Magic Guide to Self-Attunement, Reiki Spiritual Healing. So when I talk about Brett, yes, we've talked about healing racism within, but the underpinnings of that is so deeply grounded in his life path, his work, his own personal life. And that's why today's show is so kind of important. Because this is something people that are of color or part of the LGBTQ plus community really know. They know the energy of racism. They know it. They feel it, but they don't know it the way that Brett Bevell is going to talk about it today. Brett, great to have you, right?
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Come on. There is an energy. Come on. There is an energy. And yet we just don't know what to call it. Now, sometimes it's the energy of hate, right? Mm-hmm. But tell us from your perspective what this energetic field is. And it's not new. It's been with us historically. I like to say hysterically. Because when we talk about something like this, there's just a whole lot of crazy that has gone on the way we treat people. Give us a little update on what that means. And what made you aware of it?
Yeah, so I first became aware of it, I think, probably in the early 1990s when I was riding the New York subway system with a girlfriend of mine at the time who happened to be a woman of color. We were holding hands on the G train. And I was also happened to be working at a pagan bookstore at that time, and I was paying a lot of attention to my aura and the feelings of the energy around me. And as she and I were holding hands, I just felt like these energetic knives coming at me. And nobody said anything. There were no racist remarks. There was nothing, nobody did anything to me physically, but I could feel this palpable, like energetic knives coming at her and I because we were holding hands on a train. And it made me think of two things immediately. One is, what is it like for her and other people of color all the time who are experiencing this 24/7?
Yep.
And also, what is it like for those people who were sitting here allowing this kind of energy to come through them and who are probably totally unconscious of the fact that it's even happening most of the time. And so part of my journey has been how do we, those of us who are white, how do we tap into our own consciousness, our own energetic body enough, deep enough, and clearly enough to be able to see when that arises and then to change it at its root so that we're not subconsciously sending that kind of energy out to people of color or LGBTQIA people or anybody who might seem different than us. So how do we change that energetically? And for me, a lot of that has been through Reiki. There's other forms of energy healing that people can use. I love doing Reiki, but there's a lot of ways to address it. But the first thing is just to simply become aware of the fact that it exists. And historically, it's been going on for generations, for hundreds of years. So it's kind of an energetic tsunami that has been with us for a long time.
You know, what's interesting about that description is I know that this has happened to a lot of people. I know they've seen it, but you know, part of us, we don't understand this, but we feel. I love the subway example because that totally was why I told you about my red hair thing. It was a subway experience, right?
Mhm.
You would think in New York,
Yeah.
that that would be like a non thing, like a non thing, but
Yeah.
it's not. And you know, you're so right about it, because my ignorance about it caused me to respond in a way that got us in even more trouble. You know, and I've shared this. My coach was from Ghana, Africa, and we were inseparable. We went everywhere together. We were pulled over by the police, but I did not know that my behavior would get us further into trouble. Energetically, let me just say, energetically, you could feel it. You could feel other people's anger, disgust. I don't have the language, but any kind of emotion like that, like fear,
Mhm.
fear, right? All of that. But it never, in my sister's family, she taught all of her children. We were very fortunate to have the upbringing from my mom, my stepmom. Forget my dad. My dad, I just got to throw over here. He's over there. He's just like that. He's just like crazy tunes. But I want to ask you this question. Give me the source of the energy, because we don't know the source, right?
Yeah.
Without the source, there's no remorse. Can't have it. It's got, tell us, what's the deal?
I mean, for me, the source is really ancestral. It really goes back to, you know, if you think about it in detail of, you know, who was, you know, bringing the slaves over on the boats, and who was selling the slaves, and who was, you know, running the cotton fields, and who was buying the cotton that was being sold, and all of that. If you think of that, like, let's just take an example of a plantation, you know, pre-Civil War. You know, did the white people who lived on that plantation, did they ever shed the tears or do the grief work that would be necessary to release that pattern? Probably not. Probably in most cases not.
No.
Did their children do that grief work? Probably not. And so it has just historically just been passed on from generation to generation to generation, where we don't even think about it much of the time. You know, for me, whenever I'm having what might feel like a reaction to somebody, if that person happens to be a person of color, the first thing I do now is try to check in to those voices in my head that are not mine. Like, is this coming from me, or is this coming from my grandma or my great grandpa, or like, where is this coming from? And a lot of times I can track and see, you know, my issue has nothing to do with this person who is in front of me. It's actually some old voice that I'm carrying in my head that I need to heal and release. And so it's really kind of doing that kind of work, and again, taking a deeper look into ourselves, into our ancestral history, and energetically, there are ways, there are techniques to literally, you know, sever those energetic cords and heal and release that kind of stuff.
But you know, part of this really is getting a level of awareness about it that we don't have. You know, it's what I really am wanting to talk to you about, is because there is a spread of it. You know, my sister, when she was alive, was so revered in the multicultural, multiracial world. She was revered. When she died, there were at least 3 to 5 Yonkers blocks of people of all colors, of all religions. She was so revered. You know, when you went to her apartment in the worst possible project in Yonkers you can imagine, her door was never locked. And those of us that came were interestingly protected. So when I would come, 3 guys would meet me, 3 men of color would meet me. They had a cone in the parking space. They would remove the cone, I would pull in, and they would put the cone on my car and escort me up there with a couple of 9mm guns. This is my sister. And I would ask her, how did you become so loving? And I asked her that despite how my dad treated her.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something interesting to me, Brett, and I hope we could all get it. She said, what's the alternative of that, Pat? She says, it's hate. You know,
Yeah.
it's just, so I want to ask you this question. This level of energetic racism is spreading worse than the virus and the pandemic, in my opinion. What's your thought?
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, it feels like a mental virus, you know. There's actually, I've seen some books recently come out. I forget the title, but about a mind virus, you know, that there's this almost like energetic virus of hatred and you know, anger that is kind of engulfing the planet right now.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it shows up as racism, but it can also be homophobia or other, you know, misogyny, other ways of disparaging people and creating an us and them mentality. And you know, I mean, I think even the war in the Ukraine is kind of consumed by that energy. Even though they are all of the same color, there's still that same kind of vibration of hatred that's just spinning out of control, that has caused this horrible conflict. And I feel that, again, these are things that everything is made of energy. You know, that Einstein knew that E equals mc² squared. Everything is made of energy, and energetically these issues can be addressed. And it does take a responsibility for each of us individually to, first of all, acknowledge our own energy, and then take a commitment to rectify things where things are out of balance or where we need to bring healing to ourselves. But things can change. Again, I came from a pretty horrific childhood where there was a lot of hatred, and, you know, witnessed a murder when I was a child, a race-based murder, and other such things. And yet, you know, I'm now married to a woman of color. I have a beautiful multiracial son. I'm a very happy person. I feel like I'm doing good work in the world. So there's a way to turn that stuff around. And again, the tools that I talk about energetically are not the only path, but they're a path that for me has been very useful. And so I like to teach that and hopefully bring that out to the world.
It's so important to do it. But I want to get back to something you said before we do that. I want to talk about transformation around racism, homophobia, misogyny, whatever you want to talk about, because it's across the board. And it's not just across the board energetically now, it's seeping into our legislation. The latest legislation, the latest anti-abortion legislation is criminal. It is just criminal. I don't care what side you're on, pro-life, pro-choice. There is a middle ground for people to get through, and it's not putting women in jail. That is not the place. But you work with this, you heal with energy. You're a master at it. How do people find out about you, and what kind of courses are you now featuring in the upcoming months?
Sure. So they can find out at me at brettbevell.com. That's BRETTBEVELL.com. And if you go to my live dates page, it'll show you where my upcoming trainings are. I'm actually offering a healing on Zoom tonight. That's going to be a live group energy healing. But also later this summer in July 1st through 3rd, I'm offering a 1st and 2nd degree Reiki training at Omega Institute, which is a very beautiful holistic retreat center in upstate New York. So please, visit my page and check out a number of the offerings. There's both live in-person things as well as live online events as well.
Yeah. Omega's got some incredible training and learning opportunities. Look, everything's energy. I think one of the greatest misunderstandings we have is that we can control our own energy field. Despite what's coming at us, despite the harm that's coming at us, despite the harm that's coming at other people, we can really control it. Now, I will say when I was younger, I didn't understand this very well. And I watched our car coming back from a tournament be pulled over because my coach was Black. As I said, I had other people of color in the car, and we were pulled over in somewhere around Philly, and we weren't speeding. There wasn't a headlight out. There were we weren't drinking, right? You know, we actually were pretty sad because I got my butt kicked, but we got pulled over. And what happened to me was the energy that came towards Sam, I exerted back to the police. And that was a mistake.
Mhm.
You see, this is so important, yet every cell in our body wants to scream out. It wants to say no. It wants to say that's not just. But that can't possibly be the transforming the energy of racism moment. I don't know. Tell us how we do that.
Yeah, I think, well, I want to commend you that you did recognize and acknowledge the energy that was there. I think for me, what I invite people to do, whether it's through meditation or energy healing, is to be able to acknowledge that energy and then also find your place of centeredness, find your place of neutrality, so that you can witness that energy the same way you witness a cloud passing across the sky. And then again, with Reiki, there's actually at the second degree level, there's symbols that you can use for mental emotional healing. They're quite effective. And so doing mental emotional healing on issues around racism, or whether it's racist imprints that you're carrying from the past, or racial trauma that you have, if you're a person of color, that you've endured in this lifetime, that can be healed energetically through the second degree symbol in Reiki. And there's other forms of energy healing as well, but Reiki is probably the most popular and most well known. And so I want to focus on that as my answer.
Well, let's tell people about how that works, because there may be some people that are familiar with Reiki, but they may not know how it works. Now, tonight, you're going to be featuring something that's going to demonstrate that. How do people get there? How do they, I don't know, is it open to the public?
It is open. There is a fee. There's a $35 fee. It's a 1 hour healing on Zoom. And people come on it. So if you go to my live dates section, it'll say tonight. So Wednesday, April 20th, it'll say, "This is Spinal Zap." And there's a little link there. You click the link. It tells you a little more information about the class. And there's the option to purchase the class. When you purchase it, you're then sent a Zoom link. And then you just show up, and I'm there at 9:00. And also for people who can't be there live, if you do buy it ahead of time, then I just send you a recording, which will still carry the energy of it. Basically, I just do an energy healing for about 45 to 50 minutes. And then at the last 10 minutes, I just ask for people's comments and questions, but it's a very deep process of healing that it can release energetic cords. It can release stuff from past lives, negative karma. So even if one wanted a healing that had nothing to do around energies of race, is still a very powerful experience.
I asked Linda to see if I can get an interview with a young person in Florida that was talking to classmates about Stonewall.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you read the article. And I asked Linda to please, could you get can we see if we can interview them, of course, with their parents, because they're 17.
Yeah.
Because for those of us that were at Stonewall, we really want to have a conversation with somebody that's carrying the message forward, because I got to tell you, before long, we're not going to remember the marches on Washington in the 60s. We're not going to remember the death of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. We're not going to remember what it was like to be out on the streets every day for women's rights. We're not going to remember any of that. We're not going to remember the Gloria Steinems, we're not going to remember the women and the men, by the way, men and women of all colors, that had no digital format to hit a button and tweet because it didn't work. You had to be there in person. What is the energy that we need to create now to really initiate real change?
For me, again, I would say starting with ourselves and taking responsibility for our personal energy, but also realizing that we are part of a collective. We are part of an interconnected web. And what happens in Florida doesn't stay in Florida. What happens in the Ukraine doesn't stay in the Ukraine. That energetic web engulfs all life. And there's ripples of information and currents of energy that are interconnected between all life. And so the more you take responsibility for your own energy and then start to expand that awareness, you begin to see that sense of interconnection is important. So first of all, clearing and healing yourself, but then also For example, if you're a Reiki practitioner, you can also send healing out into the world to those kinds of issues, to the issues of what's happening with the legislature and the governor in Florida and the kind of things they're trying to do, what's happening in Texas with the diminished abortion access, what's happening in the Ukraine with the horrible war that's happening there. And it's not that one healer is going to be able to end that with one healing session. But I think if there's, tens of thousands of people who are doing work both on themselves and sending light out into the world, I do believe that it has, what they call the Maharishi effect, where students at the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's University in Iowa literally did an experiment where they would meditate on the crime going down in Washington, D.C. And over a period of time, they tracked the statistics, and they noticed that while they were meditating on the crime actually went down. And so we can have an impact on the larger whole energetically. And again, also I want to reinforce, not just energetically, make sure you vote, make sure you're active in your community, make sure that you're, being mindful of who you vote for, what you contribute to, and all those kind of important aspects of being a standing up citizen in this country.
Brett, let's talk a little bit, if we could, about the book that you wrote. We've talked about it before, but if you were to rewrite that book now,
mm-hmm.
what would you add to it?
I think I would expand more on the chapter about what I call multiracial gratitude. Because the more, ever since the book's been published, and the more I reread that chapter and the more work that I do with that, it really opens a person up. It also doesn't require any in-depth energy healing training. So it doesn't require any kind of new age consciousness that somebody like me might have. It's just a simple act of being grateful for, what other cultures bring, what people from other cultures bring, and you can start simple, making a list of 10 to 20 things a day and just doing that as a regular practice. And, scientists know that gratitude rewires the brain in a positive way. And so if you specifically intend that to be about issues of race and cultural diversity, it will start to rewire your brain in that positive way. And so, yeah, if I could rewrite the book, I would expand that part significantly.
I want to take a moment again to let people know, if we could, one, how they can find out more about you, how they can get a copy of that book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book to really, as a family, really get and bring into the family and really share, especially with children. It's just wonderful. But how do they find out about you? And then remind us again of what your upcoming classes at Omega are.
Yeah, so the book, you can get it, at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. And again, it's Healing Racism Within. My name's Brett Bevell. It's published by Monkfish Publishing. So Barnes and Noble, Amazon, also your local bookseller hopefully would carry it. So if you want to support your local bookstore, which I'm always, in favor of promoting that, just go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you. And in terms of, me, again, my website is brettbevell.com. That's BRETTBEVELL.com. If you go to my live dates page, it'll show the healing that I'm offering tonight, which starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time and goes for an hour. It's called This is Spinal Zap. But if you also scroll further down, there's some of the offerings that I'm having at Omega Institute later this year, starting with a 1st and 2nd degree Reiki training the weekend of July 1st through 3rd. So I'd certainly welcome people, learning not only more about me and what I do, but also the important processes that are in the book, Healing Racism Within.
And I would love for you to leave us with a daily practice, leave us with something that people can implement today.
Yeah, today, I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Make a list of 10 to 20 things that are about a culture or a person who is different than you, different color, different language, however you want to interpret that, and express gratitude around that. You don't necessarily have to express it to them. You can if you want to, but literally making a gratitude list. So, for example, if I would say aloud, I'm grateful for the presence of Muhammad Ali, who really influenced me as a child. I never met him, but his poetry, his wit, his courage was a great influence on me as a child. All right. So that's just one item that I'm sharing with you right now. But so people can honor whether it's athletes, musicians, chefs and food, music, art, writing, just write a list down, 10 to 20 things per day. And just start there and just see what it starts to do for your consciousness.
Yeah. Boy, it's so important. There's nothing more powerful than gratitude, is there?
Yeah. It's
I want to ask you this last question as we move forward and we're looking at this. And I just want to hear, as you look ahead, Brett, what are you envisioning? What is your greatest vision for the work you're bringing forward in the world? And what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So my greatest vision is that, again, would be that people embrace the concepts that are in the book and begin doing that deep inner work. That it isn't necessarily easy, but I can tell you it is amazingly liberating. It is amazingly liberating to do this kind of work. And, I think I may have mentioned this before on your program, that since the book was the galley copies first came out, I lost 40 pounds since then. And I think literally it was the energetic weight of what I had been carrying, from what I experienced as a child and what I saw around issues of race, and that I'm free of that. And so this work isn't easy, but it is so extremely liberating, far more liberating than any of the other self-help work that I've done. And believe me, I've done a lot working at Omega Institute for the last 20 years. So it's incredibly liberating. And I just invite people to just take those baby steps, even if it's just that gratitude practice that I mentioned earlier.
I love it. Brett Bevell. Brett, give out your website one more time. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. And my website is brettbevell.com. That's BRETTBEVELL.com.
I love it. Thank you all. Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much. Again, go to Omega and you'll find out the upcoming work that Brett is doing. And remember what he said today about these moments of gratitude. Remember about how each and every one of us can shift our energy immediately. That is the power we have within. No one can steal that from us. Let's take a short break. More coming up on Transformation Talk Radio.